I love giant robots. Ever since I was a kid, I've been obsessed. Shows like Power Rangers Wild Force with the Wild Zords, Gundam Mobile G Fighter, and Zoid's New Century all helped shape that obsession. Nothing captured that feeling more though than Transformers Armada. Might not be the one that everybody else mentions like the 1984 one, but it was airing during my childhood in 2002, so it's my Transformers. What the? Speaking of 2002, let's turn the clock back to that year when Tom Brady got his first Super Bowl of many, and Bush was making a fool of himself on camera as always.
Fool me, we can't get fooled again.
Now watch this drive.
Kmart had just filed for Chapter 11 for the first time, and not the last. Spider-Man was the hot movie to see, and Avril Lavigne was lighting up those charts with the bop Complicated. But the most important thing about 2002 was that I, at the age of 4, came into consciousness. Due to the newfound obsession with robots and capitalism working at its fullest, I asked my mom if we could go to the store so we could look at the new line of toys that just come out for the show. Optimus Prime was a fucking big rig truck and trailer, and that could combine with his trailer into a bigger robot. Chef's kiss. As a kid who grew up in the South, that was the most southern thing at the time besides NASCAR. Makes me want to pull one out for Dale.
Well, dude, for Dale!
Thinking it couldn't hurt, she took me to the place to be in the early 2000s, Walmart. Back when they had the yellow smile as the logo and they still had the classic interactive gaming area where you could play PS2 and Xbox demos. After arriving at the store and my mom doing the grocery shopping, we made our way to the promised land, which was the toy aisle. We passed these discount movie bins along the way with movies from top to bottom full of usually older movies and straight to VHS horror flicks. Usually I was too spooked to look into the bin because my soul couldn't handle just seeing the cover of these. No joke, to this day I'm a big baby about horror movies and I still sprint up the stairs after I turn off the light so the demon doesn't get me on the way up. Also, side note, this is off script. I recently watched the full Mandela catalog because I kind of wanted to see what it was about. Hated it. I wake up in the middle of the night now, sometimes, and I'm freaked out. So let me tell you right now, don't do it, kids. Don't do it if you're not ready. I'm 27 and I'm as scared of a fake thing on the internet. That's crazy. But today was different. Today was a day about being brave like Optimus Prime. So I looked in the bin ready to conquer my fears. And that's when my little goblin brain saw it. A VHS with a little gray robot on it. The cover had the robot on it and he was flying in the sky like Superman. Put a pin in this as this will be relevant later. And then I tried to read the title. Just kidding, I was 4, so I didn't know how to read. So I had to give it to my mom so she could read me the title. She said it was called
The Iron Giant.
The Iron Giant premiered in Los Angeles 1999 on July 31st and then released to the States on August 6th. The movie was produced by Warner Brothers Animation and directed by Brad Bird. If you don't know who that is, he's directed films such as The Incredibles, Ratatouille, and Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol. What? One of these things is not like the other. Also, you can thank him for this Miss Incredible scene. Damn. That's where boys became men, am I right? Before this movie, he helped write the screenplay for a film called Batteries Not Included, which I've never seen before until writing this, but it also deals with extraterrestrial beings, so I guess Warner Brothers thought it was just a slam dunk and he gave him the wheel. The movie also stars some big names such as Jennifer Aniston from Friends, Ellie Marienthal from American Pie, which had come out the same year, Christopher McDonald from Happy Gilmore and Flubber, both in which he played villains, and spoiler alert, he plays one in this as well. We also have Harry Connick from Independence Day and the legend himself, Dominic Toretto, coming off of Saving Ryan's Privates. Side note, Peter Cullen was under the consideration for the part of the Giant, which if you don't know who that is, he also voiced Optimus Prime in the original 1984, and he now voices them in the Transformers Michael Bay movies. So my Transformers fixation was not just me as a kid.
Amazing. A booby trap that actually catches boobies.
How can this not be a hit with such a large cast? Oh. That's a big fucking yikes. Maybe it was just a bad year for films. Oh. Then maybe it was just animated kids movies? Oh. So, Warner Brothers wasn't exactly hitting it out of the park with animated films. The prior year, The Quest for Camelot did horribly at the box office with a budget of $40 million, only making $38.1 worldwide, which is almost at that, break-even mark, but didn't hit it. Even in the same year as The Iron Giant came out, that March, they had made a movie called The King and I, which had a budget of $25 million and only took home $12 million. And yes, I know they had the Scooby-Doo movies, which were a massive success, but that is an established IP and they all went straight to VHS films. Like I had some of those as well, like Cyber Chase, but those were its own thing and had its own IP, so Warner Brothers shilled out marketing, so they were gonna be a success. These ones, They didn't do well. I think Warner Brothers didn't have a lot of confidence in animation after these numbers. This was the point where they didn't give The Iron Giant a release date until April. If you can count on your hand, that was a little under 4 months for the team to spin up marketing for a movie. That is not a lot of time, fellas. As anybody's doing any kind of project like that, that ain't gonna work. That ain't doing it.
Yeah, I've got time.
That late decision by them also kind of lines up with the reporting they would have gotten for The King and I, so optimism was at an all-time low. Warner Brothers, to their credit, at least cranked out production and marketing for the VHS release, hence why I was able to get it, even though it wasn't a discount movie bin and years later. If they didn't produce as many as they did, I wouldn't have gotten it, so good on you, I guess. It went on to win a Saturn Award for home video release and a bunch of Annie Awards and nominations. Ellie Marienthal also won awards for his voiceover talents as Hogarth. So while it didn't do financially well, the movie had become a cult classic to this day, as a lot of people talk about it as being one of their favorite childhood movies, and just one that they really enjoy to this day, and I can agree with it as a biased party. The Giant also makes some cameos to this day. We can see him in Ready Player One in a main story piece, as well as fist-bumping King Kong in the latest Space Jam: A New Legacy movie. And oh yeah, I guess in the multiverse game as a playable character, but I'm not a fighting game person, so, but you know, the win's a win. Now, I've not seen this movie in quite some time, but I wanted to go down memory lane as the movie turned 25 last year. I'm feeling a little sentimental and never-ending existential dread of growing older, that I am now 27 and will never have my carefree childhood again. So anyway, The Iron Giant! So the movie takes place in 1957, and we see the satellite Sputnik fly across the screen, along with a meteor coming for Earth. A fisherman already caught in a storm is now about to have his livelihood taken away from him, as what he thinks is a safe haven in a lighthouse is actually the Iron Giant himself. After his boat gets absolutely fucked, he gets sent overboard into the sea. The next morning, we see our main character Hogarth bombing it down the hill on his bike to where his mom, Annie, works. She always gave me the Reba McEntire vibes, you know.
Single mom who works too hard.
By the way, I know his name is Hogarth, but saying that 100+ times in the script is gonna actually be the end of me, so I'm just gonna say Hogar, as that's the nickname everybody else calls him in the movie. Hogar, like all dumb kids, just wants a pet. He brings his newfound friend via a box into the diner to show his mom. However, he doesn't have the best choice of friends, as this squirrel Mission Impossibles his way out of the completely secure shoebox. See what I did there? Brad Bird, you know, he directed a Mission Impossible movie. Yeah. He must be attracted to cool cats as he runs under the table for the next character, Dean McCoppin. Or Machoppin. I don't actually know. I think McCoppin? McCoppin sounds about right. He's a scrapyard man by day and poetry snapping artist by night, complete with the black turtleneck and shades on inside a diner. What a guy. During this, the fisherman from the first scene is getting absolutely clowned on by the Smooth Head Gang for saying he saw invaders from Mars and how he called DC about it. Dean, while trying to stand up for the kook, feels the squirrel enter his pants from his leg. Seems the squirrel is behind on his nut storage for the winter as he makes his way up to Dean's pants for another set. This causes Dean to wig out and release the beast in his pants for all to see. I also want to clarify that Disney would shamelessly steal this bit 9 years later for their hit single, Squirrels in My Pants. The squirrel then causes plates to go flying, people to fall over, and this girl just getting the absolute money shot from what I can assume is her date. Hogarth gets in trouble. Who would have guessed? Later on, we see Annie ends up having to work late, and while she recommends the nutritional options of a growing boy like chicken and vegetables, going to bed early with no spooky movies, but fuck that, Hogarth don't play by those rules. Hogarth is Big Dog, and what does Big Dog want to do? Big Dog wants to pound Twinkies and watch really bad acting horror movies, which almost look like the start of an adult film, and I'm expecting to see the Cornhub logo at any point.
I think you've seen enough. How about a nightcap? Let's say my place.
You know, maybe Big Dog should go to sleep actually. You know, maybe his mom makes some good points. I think God also agrees, as a noise is heard upstairs causing Hogarth to investigate, and by the time he comes back down for what I can only call the climax of the film, the TV starts going in and out, and due to the antenna being stupid. Further side note, after seeing this movie as a kid, this Twinkie scene where he absolutely stuffs that Twinkie full of cream made me think it was like the food of the gods. I couldn't wait for anything than to absolutely get some of that. So after finally getting one and trying it, Twinkies suck. Twinkies are bad. It's a bad spongy cake. The cream is very not creamy. I was expecting like a whipped cream when I was a kid. And it's very oily. How can a cake be that oily? God only knows. So fuck Twinkies. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Now Hogarth goes to investigate the antenna where he finds pieces of it missing, as well as a path of devastation leading into the woods. Hogarth is still Big Dog though, and you know what he does? He goes inside and gets strapped like it's his God-given right. Man is on a mission. He's about to go to war. Odd thought, do you think Hogarth would be a MAGA supporter? Hogarth sets out to follow the trail and see a whole ass uprooted tree along the way, which is when I would turn back as I enjoy this thing called being alive. But Big Dog cocks the Glock and is ready to lay into a motherfucker as he stumbles into a power station and comes to find out the giant is just hanging out in the darkness until we see those glowing eyes. Hogarth loses his rifle to the giant's foot, and then the giant just starts going to town on that metal station like it's a bag of Funyuns. Too bad he was going a little too hard as he gets zapped and then fumbles into some power lines, which knocks out the power going to the town. Hogarth starts to blue skidoo out of there until he hears the giant screaming like a book talk girl is having their way with him. Like a real homie though, he comes back and shuts the power off before the giant gets hurt more. The giant then falls to the ground, but he's just pulling a little ha-ha as he gets up again and Hogarth runs for help to the main road where he finds his mom looking for him. After him trying to explain the totally real situation that just happened, she says she is not in the mood. Women, am I right? Back in school the next day, the kids are learning about what to do when an atomic bomb is inbound. I, on the other hand, would normally just throw some gaming words into the chat before turning my Xbox off.
Tactical nuke incoming!
Now, the other kids in his class are talking about what could have happened to Earl's boat, which is the name of the fisherman from before, and Hogarth tries to actually them before being called a spaz, which that's terrible, but it's kind of funny. The kids then conclude, whatever it is, they need to bomb it, but that's the American way. Also, turns out Earl did call DC, and they actually sent someone. That man is Kent Mansley from the Bureau of Unexplained Phenomenon, or Bup. I'm going with Bup. He's a part of Bup. We see him at the power station where he flexes to the foreman of his special little role and how he protects the nation and blah, 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 blah. We get it, Kent. You get pussy. He then gets shown the only leading evidence being the remains of Hogarth's rifle, which you can only read the words hog on it. Kent remarks that this is nothing and that big things only happen in big places, but is then spooked as when he gets to his car, a large section is just gone. I'm sorry, is the giant Sly fucking Cooper? How did he sneak over in the scene that lasted 1 minute and 14 seconds? Trust me, I clocked it. How did he take a bite out of that thing and then scoot out of there in broad daylight? There was also a crew of people working on the power station, and no one heard the giant do this? I counted at least 4 dudes just in the scene's shots alone. There could be more a part of that group, but they're off camera. That giant had to be zooming to get what he did, so he can't be tiptoeing. Then, just to make it even crazier, after Kent leaves to get people to come back to look, he moves his arm out and scoops the rest of the pizza like it's a last slice of Big Daddy pizza from school. And this is just one of those weird things that never make sense in these giant monster movies. And like, you can go from shaking the ground one moment, like Rexy does in Jurassic Park, where it's actually shaking, to then tiptoeing around like in bunny slippers and sneaking up at the end of the movie and just like saving the day for some reason. That shouldn't be possible. Other movies do this too, like the Kaiju in Pacific Rim sneaking up on Gypsy Danger, or Godzilla in the newest movies when he's just walking through the city in these bunny slippers, creeping around on the other monsters, like this scene where he ambushes this one monster. Like, it's crazy. But anyway, thank you for coming for my second TED Talk. This was a TEDx talk, that's why it sucked. Thank you. Hogarth wants to get a picture of the giant, so he takes his camera to the woods with a piece of scrap metal as bait so he can snag that action shot for the Daily Bugle. Hogarth's not a very good photographer though, as he falls asleep while waiting. That's just the American way. That's called silent quitting, guys. Fucking remember it. He is then spooked awake by the sound of metal, only to see that it is gone and the giant is behind him again. Sneaky boy at it again. Hogarth then runs for his life and the giant walks after him while making the most fucking noise possible. To hark on the fact of what I said earlier, that's crazy. Luckily, Hogarth doesn't have to witness the logical injustice for very long as he gets clotheslined by a branch.
Evergreen Branch, University of Alabama. Roll Tide.
The giant, after catching up and Hogarth comes back into consciousness, pops the fattest squat I've ever seen. He shows Hogarth this power switch that he used to save him, showing he was aware what was happening while getting L-zapped. Hogarth tries to communicate with the giant as it just stares blankly back like a cat who doesn't acknowledge your presence. Kiwi, please love me, I saved you. He tries to Helen Keller the giant by showing him what rocks and trees are called. Oh, and if you haven't guessed it by now, that is indeed Dominic Toretto playing the giant. This started his odd career of, playing large, simple character roles like the giant and Groot.
If I had a nickel for every time I was doomed by a puppet, I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice, right?
Hogarth starts wigging out about having his own private robot. And then the giant just starts to wig out. He warns the giant to not act like a freak or the guns will come out because yet again, that is the American way. Time passes and Hogar tries to leave for the night, and the giant, being the lost puppy he is, attempts to follow Hogar home. He leaves the giant at the railroad tracks, which was his first mistake. It was like bringing someone on a diet to a Raising Cane's, and are they expected not to get the Caniac combo, substitute the slaw for extra fries, and then add an extra piece of toast, extra dip, and a large Coke Zero? No, they will get it because that is the nature of Cane's, as is the nature of the giant, as he starts to eat the railroad tracks like they're fucking metal spaghetti coming to Mamma fucking Mia. Hogar dropping the ball again, and for some butt-clenching tension, a train is coming down the tracks, and like all good group project leaders on a school project, Hogar just barks orders at the only member of the team, the giant, that can finish the project on time. After the first attempt, Hogar says good enough, as if that track is not anything other than mega fucked. Still like, huh? That train is going to go off that some bitch and that conductor is going to meet God. Luckily, the giant is a perfectionist as he tries to make them super straight and together, all while the train is getting closer and... So, the giant met God instead. JK, the giant said, I didn't hear no bell, and started summoning all his parts back to him via his little antenna. I think this is a really cool scene. It's like Build-A-Blocks. Like, what the fuck? The man could just bring himself back to life. That's crazy. The gang ends up making it back to Hogar's barn with all the little giant parts rolling and walking their way in. Kind of a cool scene of all the pieces starting to combine back together as he self-repairs the damages. Hogar leaves to have dinner, and the giant attempts to wave at him, but oh no, his hand has gone rogue. During all this, the mayor's office gets a call from the train operator who seems to have lived, thank God, calling about a giant he hit, which causes Kent, who was with the mayor at this time, to take the mayor's own car and speed to the scene. The start of Kent the Menace has begun, by the way. You'll know more about that later. After arriving on scene, Kent gets the same story relayed to him, but he mentions he was specifically a metal man. Kent, needing to call mommy, heads to the closest house to ask a friendly neighbor to use their phone. By the way, this is 100% of its time because let me tell you, someone I don't know knocks on my door, I ain't answering shit. You can stay outside. I'll just watch you through the camera till you leave. I'm not letting you in. Let me hear a hell yeah from all my introverted brothers. Hell yeah. Back to Hogar and his mom sitting down for dinner. Like all good Christian households, Hogar has to say the prayer, and of course, the rogue Iron Hand has appeared in the kitchen, looking for a midnight snack after his traumatic incident. Hogar plays it cool, of course, and lands the perfect prayer while trying to get the hand from fucking with shit like a cat that has jumped on the counter and won't stop fucking with the cups. Kiwi, I swear to God. Also, can I just say that the animation and facial expressions in this movie are like just great. Like, look at these stills, the pure art, the pure art. After gracefully excusing himself from the table, he tries to get the hand out of there. While doing this, he yeets a coin at the shelf trying to distract his mom like he is Agent 47 going for the kill and just absolutely destroys the spice cabinet. Right before freedom is on them though, Hogar opens the door and our favorite creep Kent is at the door. You would think once Hogar slammed the door in his face that he would get the hint, but Kent is a determined little fucker and spams the doorbell like he is pinging for assistance in the bot lane from the jungler. Hogar, politely yet firmly, tells him that they're eating, but this man is coming through that door no matter what, and stares a little too long at Annie's tits, and if you didn't hate him before, buckle up. Ken asks to use the phone and calls up mommy, who pretty much clowns on him for not having any real evidence and then gets hung up on. He thanks them for using the phone and leaves while fucking up the name of Hogarth like a degenerate. After making fun of Hogarth's name in the car, Ken brain blasts the name Hogarth Hughes, having to be the owner of the rifle they found at the power station. Ken pops a Yui and returns to the Hughes family where he gives back the rifle and says he found it at the power station. Annie proceeds to narc on Hogarth by saying he was there the other night, which now has Ken bricked up for information. Before Ken can follow up with any questions though, a toilet is flushed upstairs, which then prompts Hogarth to say he has to use the restroom and runs up the stairs as he catches the Iron Hand just acting a fool. Annie is still spilling the beans about what Hogarth said to her the other night before. We then hear Hogarth making a commotion as he is trying to get the Iron Hand out the window. They go upstairs to check on him as it sounds like Hogarth is actually pushing the fattest log out. Once he does the final pushing gets the hand out the window, Annie busts open the door to try to see what the commotion is. Luckily, Hogarth is in the shit pushing position on the can, and here's Kent being a little too interested in Hogarth on the can. Like, can we lock this man up already? No? Okay, fine. I'll settle for the door just catching him in the face as they swiftly leave. The Iron Hand slithers back into the barn where the giant lets it in. Ken is now leaving for real this time, with a promise that he will be seeing Hogarth again real soon. Flash the warning lights, everybody. We got a Jared Footlong Fogel situation about to happen, so please call the cops. Later on, Hogarth goes to the barn to see the giant and brings him some comics to show him. Hogarth ends up showing him Superman, which catches the giant's interest. He compares how the giant and Superman crash landed and only used their powers for good and never evil. The giant sees a different comic about the Metal Menace Atmo, where Hogarth says he's a villain and that the giant isn't like him. that he's a good guy like Superman, where the giant then says, my boy's learning to speak. They grow up so fast. The giant, like all gamers, starts to get the late night munchies though. Hogarth, being the host he is, gets on the giant's hand and redirects him forward to go towards some snacks. Boy goes Pacific Rim style here though, and they start drifting. They end up coming across the city of Rockwell, where the giant just starts high-kneeing it toward the town, ready to fucking chow down on some metal. Hogarth, being the reasonable one though, has to shout to get him to stop right before they make it to the main part of town. Hogarth explains that people aren't really ready for him, which causes the giant to turn around sad and walk away. I mean, like, all my boy really wanted was snacks. Like, come on, man. They end up finding an abandoned car on the road. Hogarth thinks it would be a fine meal for the giant before the giant gets absolutely cucked as headlights appear, which causes them to pose like a model on the billboard. They see Dean hook up the car and drive off with it. The giant, having to see a gourmet meal just past him, kind of like when you are at a Mexican restaurant, hear them fajitas just sizzling as the server walks by on your table, and you think to yourself, man, I should have gotten that. But it's too late now, and you'll just have to eat the fucking tacos you already ordered, you dumb piece of shit. What was I saying? Hogarth notices the McCoppin scrap name on the truck, which would be like a golden corral to the giant, but less shit, and they follow the car to the spot. After getting there and Hogarth giving the go-ahead for the all-you-can-eat buffet, the giant just starts pounding the scrap metal like a Nathan's hot dog eating contest, but oops, one of the hot dogs has an alarm in it. Of course, this makes too much noise, and good old Dean comes out in his Sunday's best looking to swing on someone. After realizing it was just Hogarth, he lets him in, which, not to be that guy again, but people were just super nice back in the 50s, I guess, because letting strangers use their phone or come in for looks to be a fucking midnight chat, like, this is why kids and women went missing all the time back then. Like, I'm listening to enough of my wife's true crime podcast to know this is how they always start. Anyway, Hogarth gets a look at Dean's bachelor pad, and we find out he is into making art out of trash. Dean goes to make coffee and offers Hogarth milk because I guess that's all he thinks that a child would drink, but Hogarth wants coffee, as that's what the hip people do. The way they look at each other during this interaction is fucking gold. Like, they animated this so well, I love it, and I can't stop talking about it, and I'm just gonna keep talking about it throughout this damn video. I get to do what I want, because I made it. That's it. Dean tries to convince Hogarth that this is espresso and calls it CoffeeZilla, which, after Hogarth drinks maybe a single cup of espresso, he is fucking wired. Homie starts flying off the handle about his school and social life and not being able to fit in with the kids and the bullying he experiences. Dean, in a nice moment, advises Hogarth saying,
Who cares what these creeps think, you know? They don't decide who you are, you do. You are who you choose to be.
Interrupting this fireside chat, there was the giant outside making noise and snacking. Dean sees the giant and geeks the fuck out trying to get him and Hogarth out of there. That's when Big Brother Giant goes after them, thinking Dean is hurting or taking away Hogarth. After catching them, Giant looks like he's about to eat the man until Hogarth says Dean is cool and did not squish him. Hogarth gives Dean the 411 on the giant and gets him caught up. Hogarth then alludes to Dean that the giant needs a place to stay and to eat, which prompts Dean to mic drop out of there. And a literal white text on black says 37 minutes later as Hogarth tries to convince this man to house the giant. Dean finally agrees to him staying one night and then passes out. Hogarth leaves the giant sleeping in the metal heap and then sneaks back into the room exhausted after being out all night. Just as he's about to get into bed, his mom walks up and Hogarth proceeds to act as if he had just getting up and is asked to come downstairs for a surprise. The surprise, in fact, is Dean fucking Mansley renting the room out that Annie had been trying to fill. This was briefly mentioned in the opening diner scene, but a lot was going on, so I didn't mention it. We also saw the room for rent sign in the window when Kent was leaving the house for the second time, so the writing was on the wall. Whatever you gotta do for the Benjamins, I guess. Hogarth ain't about this new living situation and decides breakfast with this man ain't worth it. Back to Dean, who wakes up to the giant goofily looking at him, with Dean remembering just now the events of the night before. He calls Hogarth saying he could only stay the night and it's morning now. Granted, when Dean said this, it was already morning, so wouldn't that mean that the night that was coming up and not the night they had just been awake through? Also, Dean only got 2 hours of sleep as well and is now just wide awake? Man, people in the 50s built different, am I right? I mean, coffee and opioids, huh? Ken comes in being a fucking freak as always though, trying to figure out who Hogarth was on the phone with and then proceeds to play 50 questions with the man. You can tell Ken doesn't know how to talk or interact with children as he's got that hey cool kids meme in a nutshell attitude about him. Hogarth then attempts to leave the house when Annie suggests to take Kent with him to see the sights. Like, what the fuck? Like, really, mom? The sights? With this freak? Hogarth shows Kent at a local diner what sounds like the most delicious ice cream, but oops, turns out the landslide Hogarth just made is actually made up of laxatives, which this has to be some kind of crime in some states or something, right? Kent, while gobbling that shit up, starts going absolutely bananas on him with some tinfoil hat shit, mentions Canada of all places, but he never gets to the finish as the landslide starts sliding in his stomach as he breaks for the bathroom to make it look like a Taco Bell massacre in there. Hogarth slips away during this scene and arrives back to the Giant and Dean doing arts and crafts, but Hogarth thinks his talent would be better at a fucking spin coaster. After one wild ride though, Dean thinks they need to scoot and Hogarth suggests a trip to the lake. The beach arc, that's my favorite. Kent is still suffering from the landslide while trying to do his job and look for clues in town. Look at this one though. This man looks like ashamed of the atrocity he just pushed out in the woods like a fucking animal. That landslide will haunt him for the rest of these days. Luckily for him though, he finds Hogarth's hanging camera and there he goes again, putting his name on things again. This man will never be able to commit a crime at this rate, leaving evidence everywhere. Slide back to Hogarth and friends. After what looks to be a 4 out of 5 cannonball by Hogarth, the Giant, wanting not to show him up, gets a running start and jumps in the lake, flooding the street over and almost emptying the lake, and puts Hogarth in a tree of all places. They just having fun though, am I right? Boys will be boys. Also, poor Dean gets blasted by the tidal wave and moved into the road where he has, in my opinion, the best interaction in the movie with the car on the road.
Hey,
Yeah?
you're right in the middle of the road.
Yeah?
All right.
I think that's enough fun for one day.
Cut to Kent looking like a serial killer developing the pictures from the camera he found in the Hughes' bathroom, mind you. He ends up finding what can be called the first selfie of this era of Hogarth and the Giant. Hogarth really trying to get caught at this point because who is going to develop this film, Hogarth? You take this to the local Walgreens and they're just going to out you. Those people have no loyalty. Next, we see the Giant actually tiptoeing to creep up on a deer, which at least they are showing us how he was able to move silently before, I guess. After a nice moment with the Giant interacting with the deer runs off and we hear a gunshot. Giant runs to the sound where he finds 2 hunters. When they see the Giant though, they yabba dabba do out of there, and yes, that was Bambi's mother. What a crossover. The Giant sees the deer not understanding what death is until Hogarth tells him how the gun killed the deer. When the Giant sees the gun, this triggers what I can only assume is some programming and his eyes turn red and narrow in. Luckily, Hogarth snaps him out of it before anything happens here. Later that day, we have the Giant looking like a sad boy and thinking about the deer. Luckily, the very insightful Hogarth tells him about how all things die, but how dying isn't a bad part of life, and that all good things have a soul, and how the Giant himself has a soul. Souls don't die, they go on after death. I'm going to talk about this scene later, but I really liked this scene in the sense that like most movies about death don't really explain much about it. I mean, like I made the Bambi joke earlier, which it's so fucking funny to think about how that death also correlates to how this death learns, both deer dying, but I digress. It's just a nice scene and I like it. To ruin that nice scene though, Hogarth gets home where serial killer Kent is waiting for him in the barn and ambushes him. Like, what the fuck? Kent then starts interrogating him and shows him the selfie photo of Hogarth and the Giant that he got off his camera. Hogarth ain't backing down though until Kent then fucking throws out that he can make his mom's life difficult to the point that he calls child services and takes him away from her. Like, holy hell, I wasn't wrong on the serial killer jokes. This man is straight up a terror to society. Hogarth defeated, he tells Kent the location of the Giant and then gets fucking chloroformed, which, I mean, okay, fair. Hogarth drugged him and then Kent drugged him back. I think in the eye for an eye thing, they are squared, but besides the fact that he's a child, I think they're not. Hogarth awakes in his bed to Kent on the phone with the general saying to bring the army and how he has proof this time. Maybe Kent should have timed this differently or used more chloroform. I don't know how that works. Maybe Hogarth is just an absolute unit and it doesn't affect him as much, but based on how much time looks to have passed and how it's still night, I believe maybe an hour has passed at best, which isn't a lot of time for Sleeping Beauty over there to stay down. Hogarth, trying to sneak out again though, runs into Kent in the hallway after Kent psychs him out with a fake door leaving noise. Running to the window to leave that way, he finds the window was nailed shut and is just more psycho behavior on Kent's part. Kent then just states, "I'll be watching you," and proceeds to stare down Hogarth as he sleeps. Hogarth puts on his helmet and they have a who can stay awake longest contest. We see the time being about what to be 8:21 at the start of this stare down, so my assumption of only being an hour after the chloroforming seems to be right. Both look like Sleepy Joe by the end, and it seems Hogarth was the first to go as he rolls over. The clock now says 2:55 a.m., so these motherfuckers were staring each other down for a little over 6 hours in fucking silence, like raw dogging a flight with no entertainment. Time then skips again to 7:14 a.m., and good old Joe is sleeping at the wheel. Waking up due to his arm falling, he sees Hogarth in the same spot he left him, thinking he had won until Hogarth walks by him and says, "Morning" to him, just for Kent to rush to the bed and see that the helmet was placed on some pillows to bamboozle him. Hogarth really is the GOAT here. After being informed that the army has showed up, the Hughes take a field trip to the scrapyard where Dean puts on his best performance when leading them to where the metal man is. Dean spouts some bullshit about some rich man wanting to buy the piece of art off him and then opens the door to see the Giant disassembled into pieces of art. The general takes Kent outside for an ass chewing of a lifetime while Dean is inside getting rizzed up by Annie. Kent is basically fired and leaves defeated while Hogarth takes the win in stride. Dean gives the all clear and the giant is free to unstatue himself. They blow off some of this stress with a little make-believe game where Hogarth at first wants the giant to be Atmo, but the giant doesn't want to be the villain, he wants to be Superman. Now that the roles are switched, Hogarth points his toy gun at the giant and shoots him, which causes little sparks and noises to come out of it. This triggers that odd programming where can only guess his flashbacks in the giant's head again, which causes him to shoot lasers out of his eyes towards where Hogarth would have been if he didn't jump. Hogarth didn't notice this though. Only Dean sees this at first, and the giant snaps out of it for a second, only for Hogarth to fake shoot him again, not knowing what had just happened. Just before the laser hits Hogarth, Dean jumps in and saves him. Dean, calling the giant out, calls him a gun that walks, which, hurtful Dean, that man's got feelings. Dean points out the massive hole left where the beam would have hit Hogarth. This caused the giant to run off in horror and Hogarth to run after him. It starts to snow at this point, which aligns with the tone shift we are about to see in the movie from coming of age fun to holy shit this got real. Dean has his own brain blast and figures out the giant's programming acted in self-defense when he saw the toy gun. Just like my programming kicks in when I see the Chipotle Crispers at Chili's and I eat all of them like the fatty McFat I am. After this, Dean catches up to Hogarth to go after the giant together. The giant is walking like a sad boy in the snow towards the woods, not thinking himself a hero anymore after what he has just done. Two kids on the balcony in the town see him though, and due to their excitement, the balcony falls with them barely hanging on. The giant hears this and comes running to catch them at the last second. He lets the kids down and they return to their father. The crowd that saw this praises him for saving the kids. During this, Dean and Hogarth speed past the army leaving out of the town, but Kent gets a glimpse of the giant when he turns around to see where they are speeding off to. This causes the car to get in a double fender bender as he gets fucked from the front and the back, just like your mom. He directs the army to turn around and see, and they do, which allows them to see the giant in all his glory. Hogarth arrives at the scene where the giant picks up Hogarth in an embrace. This is short-lived as the giant gets his back literally blown out by a rocket as the army shows up and starts taking it from all sides. Hogarth tells the giant to get the fuck out as he is still in his hands at this moment. After clearing the street, Dean rolls up to Kent and the army, telling Kent that Hogarth is in the hands of the giant and they need to stop shooting. Kent says he'll tell the general and then proceeds to say the giant has killed a kid and that they need to stop it at all costs. Can I just say there was at least 5 other soldiers there when Dean was talking to Kent and none of them wanted to correct Kent when he turned around and just lied? They all have the private rank, so I guess they're all just all mouth breathers and grunts, am I right? This causes the general to get on the radio for a code red, which is never a good sign, and some Air Force jets deploy from a ship off the coast which catch up mighty quickly to the giant. Annie also initial fucking D's out of her parking spot to go after the giant as well, which she catches up to right as they infomercial down a hill. Luckily, another one of the giant's functions activates, which is jet boots that allow him to fly. They fly high into the sky, and after some advice from Hogarth, the giant strikes the Superman pose and starts to control the flight. See, I told you at the very beginning that that thing on the cover would pay off. Unfortunately for them, the fighter jets are still in the air and they have a mini one-sided dogfight where the giant almost goes sicko mode again, but stops himself this time. They are then blasted out of the sky by serial killer Kent, who at this point doesn't care about anyone but his fucking pride and does need to be sent to the streets for his crime. To the streets, I say! The blast takes the jet boosters offline and they start falling to the ground. The giant tucks and rolls during the landing, though Hogarth was sent flying. The giant, thinking the worst, starts to cry and freak out as he has another non-flashback to the deer on the ground dead. During this, the army shows up and just starts blasting again like they always do. This causes the giant to actually go sicko mode, and the dent on his head pops back out and he fully transforms into his attack mode, with both arms and chest becoming weapons that blast the tanks away. This leaves Kent with the most shocked face, like kicking a bee's nest wasn't going to cause the bees to come sting you, you idiot. The giant pursues the army while shooting at everything and anything. Meanwhile, Dean and Annie show up next to Hogarth and see that he is still breathing but unconscious, so they get him in the truck and they take off after the rampage that is happening. The giant still attacking the army guys with what looks to be a Beyblade that shoots electricity at the tanks, which is fucking rad. The army doesn't think so, as everything they've thrown at the giant has done absolutely nothing in terms of stopping him. Kent throws out the idea that a bomb from an offshore submarine could do it, which at first the general thinks Kent has lost the last marbles he had in that skull, but Kent convinces him to lure the giant away first. The general radios this in and the process starts. Hogarth wakes up while in the car headed back to town when they roll up on the barricade and get told they need to evacuate. Hogarth ain't having any of that and starts running towards the giant in time for him to make the giant miss a shot that would have destroyed the battleship on the water. Hogarth then gives the giant one of Naruto's famous motivational speeches.
No, wait, it's me! Hogarth, remember? It's bad to kill. Guns kill. And you don't have to be a gun. You are what you choose to be. You choose. Choose.
The giant then snaps out of it thanks to that speech. They come up on Dean and Kent, who are both trying to convince the general to either shoot or not shoot the giant. Hogarth breaks the tie though when he is shown to be alive in the giant's hands, which prompts Kent to say it's just a trick. This man is literally okay with child killing. Like, I don't understand. I've made my case. The giant gives Kent the death eyes, which makes him feel like a little small baby back bitch, so he takes the radio and gives the call to launch the missile. The general drops the knowledge on Kent that the missile was targeted at the giant's last location, which is right in front of them. Kent, pissing his pants now, tries to get the hell out of Dodge, but the giant makes him take another little car crash, which now has him stuck here with them and brings his car accident count to 3 for this movie. The sirens start to go off, which proves that the whole town is cooked. Hogarth tells the giant of the situation of the impending doom of the town, which prompts the giant to say he's gonna fix it. The giant then shoots off towards the sky like a man on a mission. Giant knows that he has to sacrifice himself to save the rest of them, something the Adventurers would steal 13 years later. As he gets closer to the missile, we hear the voice of Hogarth in his head, and the giant closes his eyes and says, right before colliding with the missile and a massive explosion that can be seen from the town, like a second sun, and then it fades like a far-off star. We transition to sometime later, maybe spring or summer based on the weather, where a in memory of statue of the giant is shown and is stated to have been constructed by Dean and commissioned by the town probably. We found out that Dean and Annie are now a thing, so score 1 point for Dean, baby. Woo, that's my boy. Hogarth's playing with some kids and gets called over as it's time to go. Dean gives him a package sent from the general himself, only piece that they were able to recover of the giant, which is the bolt that holds his mouth together. We fade back to Hogarth's room with him sleeping and what looks to be the little bolt gone missing when he wakes up, which is really the bolt getting sent the return signal that we saw when the giant first put himself back together earlier in the movie. Hogarth, to his delight, knows this means the giant is alive somewhere. He lets the bolt out and we see it start to travel to where the giant is. We fly ahead to see the other parts also coming together, and we end up in Iceland where the head can be seen with the signal, and we get one last look at the giant's smile as it fades to black and the credits roll. You know, looking at the credits now, Hughes is an odd name for a family in Maine. Oh, what's that? It's the author's name? There's an author? What do you mean? There's a book? This movie's based on a book? I gotta read now? Okay, it would seem the movie is somewhat adapted from the book called The Iron Man, written by Ted Hughes and published in 1968, which makes it pretty clear why this movie takes place in the late 1950s of all things. The book has some similarities to the film. Both feature the Iron Giant, or the Iron Man in this case, both who want nothing more than to eat metal, and both of them have our star kid Hogarth Hughes, but that's really where the similarities end, and I'm gonna go into the story a little bit just to tell you about it, but yeah, there's a couple big changes and differences. The book opens with the town wondering why their shit is messed up, like their tractors and sheds having what looks to be bites taken out of them. They also find massive footprints along the way, and the towns don't want to call the army or the police because they don't want to be called crazy, so they hatch a plan to lure the thing into a pit so they can bury him alive. This doesn't work at first until Hogarth lures the giant over the pit via clanking a nail and pocket knife together, which I guess like the sound of metal, or metal itself, is what attracts this guy. After the man falls in, they cover the pit, and that is that. Hogarth feels bad about this, but you know, life continues on. Months later, when a family from out of town has a picnic on the hill the giant is under, and the kettle they bring causes the Iron Man to go sicko mode and pull himself out of his dirt tomb. Hogarth, the only one in this town that has good ideas, talks to the giant to make peace and tells him if he stops eating all the people's metal and farming stuff, he can have all the metal he wants at the local scrapyard. The Iron Man follows when they get to the scrapyard and sits and starts eating his meal like a good little boy. Until sometime later, a fucking Bat Angel dragon thing comes down to Earth from the stars, which, by the way, is mentioned to be the size of Australia, and asks for human and animal sacrifices as meals. So, yeah, large left turn down what the fuck alley on this one, because I can tell you right now, that thing ain't in this movie. That ain't in the movie. So, not even any kind of mentions of it. So, where'd that go? They first, like all humans though, try to blow the thing up with bombs and the like, but nothing works. Down on their luck, they turn to the Good Idea Fairy, aka Hogarth, and Hogarth thinks the Iron Man can help in some way. He goes to the Iron Man and says that, hey man, this big thing is looking to kill us all, and that you gotta help, because if we die, you ain't getting any more metal because we can't produce any more metal, so you gotta do something about this dragon. So the Iron Man gets the idea to challenge the dragon to a feats of strength challenge, where the condition is if the Iron Man wins, the dragon becomes his slave, which Crazy. Can't be using that word now, Iron Man. Like, we are past those times. The dragon, being the size of Australia, easily accepts this challenge. The challenge starts with the Iron Man laying on a large bed of metal and oil made by the humans and asking them to light it. He gets so hot that he turns white hot. He then asks the dragon, "Your turn, buddy," and points at the sun and says, "Fly to the sun, get white hot like me, and then come back." The dragon, not wanting to be shown up, flies to the sun and gets white hot, then returns looking rough. The Iron Man, not satisfied, goes double or nothing on this challenge. They do it again, and right as the Iron Man is going for round 3, the dragon starts crying and concedes with the challenge. This is when we find out that the dragon is actually a star spirit, and that he and the other ones are responsible for the music of the spheres, which is the reason space is so peaceful, I guess? A lot of weird things going on here. Again, none of the shit dealing with the movie. Calling him out on it though, the Iron Man wants to know why you come here to eat people if you are here for peaceful reasons. He said the war and battle sounds coming from Earth caused him to want to come join in, and that something came over him wanting to come here for those reasons. So, the Iron Man has him sing the music of the spheres every night, which causes all the world to stop fighting, making weapons, and learning to work together. Kind of like a cloud of peace fell onto the Earth, and that's where the book ends. Not much to it, as it's very short and comes in at exactly 62 pages, and some of those pages being illustrations, at least for my copy. But for some of the little lessons here about working together to solve problems, and that change can happen from anywhere, and big or small, as well as war, bad, but it's the 1960s, so clearly things had happened. World War II had ended, the Cold War was here, Vietnam, the Korean War were all on the cusp, so that's just what it is. How does this tie into everything else? Well, as the wiki says, this is loosely based off of Ted Hughes' work, with only the Iron Man and Hogar making it to the big screen. I don't really have much else to say. I just wanted to share what the source material was for this, so... Oh wait, the wiki also says the Iron Giant was going to be a musical. What?
I eat heavy metal and gobble premium gas.
No, I can't do it. I need to finish this video. Maybe in a bonus video or something, I'll do something about the musical. Like, it never got finished, but the music's already out there, so I'm not touching this.
I'm not gonna run anymore.
I love everything about this movie, from the characters to the animation to the story it is trying to tell. The Iron Giant is a classic boy and his dog kind of story, and he does everything right in my opinion. Watching the giant learn about the world through Hogar, and the hijinks they get into, such as obliterating a pool, playing make-believe, and doing metal art with Dean. It's fun, it's charming, and it's a great ride. There's real growth here. The giant learns about humanity through Hogar, and Hogar, through the giant, learns about himself. Let's talk about the barn scene. It's the moment that the giant first learns about Superman. It's simple, but it hits hard. The giant technically isn't a child, but he isn't fully functioning or self-aware ever since the crash landing, due to the dent in his head. He's impressionable, like a blank slate. That's what makes this moment so important. If someone else had found him first, someone more cruel or more terrorizing, things would have turned out very differently. Red Sun Superman style. Yes, I know the irony in a movie that is steeped in Cold War propaganda, but it tracks. The point is, the giant is learning how to be good from the only person who's shown him kindness, Hogar. And Hogar is the kind of kid who wants to help. He sees it being in need and he steps up. The giant could have destroyed the town just by existing when he first landed, and Hogar could have freaked out like everybody else. But instead he chose to show him compassion when he flipped that lever at the power plant. We see this play out over and over again. The giant tries to fix the track even though he caused the problem. He saves the kids from the falling tower even though the town sees him as a threat. And in the end he makes the ultimate choice, to sacrifice himself from everybody in the town. Even Kent, the little war crime weasel who definitely deserves to see the sun up close. The giant doesn't run. He doesn't just protect the people he likes. He saves everyone. Because that's what heroes would do. That's what Superman would do. Let's pivot to Hogar for a second. The man has depth. When he talks about death after the deer scene, he sounds way too emotionally mature for his age. Like someone who's already experienced loss. And yeah, the movie never spells it out, but the clues are there. The pilot helmet in his room, the single mom setup, the picture by the nightstand of someone in the Air Force. We could put it together. Pretty sure Hogar's dad was someone in the Air Force and died in the active service. Which makes the final "I love you" to the giant feel like it hits even harder. He's not just losing a friend. He's living the pain of losing his father and maybe even saying that last goodbye he never got to say. This film is full of that kind of a layered emotional depth, even in the quieter moments. Like this scene with Dean and Hogar drinking espresso. Hogar absolutely zooted off the rails on caffeine, vents about his struggles in school with the bullies and about how he's just not fitting in and how his mom wants him to do better. He feels like an outsider. And Dean, who's clearly been through his own weird kid emotional arc, hits him with, "They don't decide who you are, you do. You are who you choose to be." A line that could have been corny, but lands because it's real. The giant needs to hear it, Hogar needs to hear it, We need to hear it. This movie resonates because it understands that being different, whether you're a giant death machine robot or a kid who likes to do his schoolwork and likes comics, isn't something to be ashamed of. It's what makes you, you. And if you can choose to be kind, brave, or even good, then it doesn't matter what you're made of. You have a soul, and that soul doesn't die. This movie hit me in ways I wasn't ready for. Again. As someone who got picked on, who was also dealt with loss, and was the weird kid in the back of the class that read his book, The Iron Giant speaks to me. It's a story about friendship, sacrifice, identity, and love. It reminds me that even the biggest, scariest parts of our lives don't define who we are. You are who you choose to be, and that's why The Iron Giant still slaps.